she has to pay her life as a price because you have a difference in opinion how the world should be functioning. Unfortunately, we've seen groups like Boko Haram in Nigeria where they abducted women as victims, and then they put them through this process of radicalization, and then they forced them. A woman would carry her own baby, imagine her own infant baby, as a cover so she can blow up herself in the middle of a market in the broad day. Same thing we've seen in Mosul recently when they start freeing some of the areas. Some of the women who were trying to run for her life, again, she used her own child, hiding a bomb in her own bag, which was supposed to tick while she's at the security check, but it didn't. There was some malfunction, some problem, technical problem with the bomb. Unfortunately, the bomb took off after she passed the security check. She killed her child and herself and killed no one else, which is a great loss on its own. Therefore, and I'll connect now directly to your central question, how to define terrorism, and can we have a definition of terrorism? The answer simply, we will never ever have a universal agreement on a definition because it's a political issue. Now, we have dozens of definitions, including ones from the UN. The problem is not in the definition, the problem is in the agreement of the definition. Worse, if we agree, how we're going to implement. Therefore, we at Hidayah, we describe ourselves as an apolitical organization. So unlike my chairman, he can tell you all his political opinions, but we as Hidayah, we basically are a non-political organization. We have no political opinion, but we do have an evidence-based approach, meaning I would give you a technical advice. If you go to the doctor and ask him about political affairs, he could be the most ignorant person, but he can only talk about his own field, and our field is countering violent extremism. We are also non-ideological, meaning we don't drive our activities and programs from a prerequisite or a certain set of ideas that we already have about how the world functions. Not at all. We approach this in terms of how we can look and chase the evidence, empirical data, research on the ground, and most importantly, what is actually happening in reality, not how we want it to be, not how we like it to be, but how it is in reality as it exists across all the spectrum and the different layers that we actually see. A third element of Hidayah organization that makes it also very, very unique, that we have two types of people working at Hidayah. We have what we call direct hires, such as myself, and then we have what we call secondment. Secondment meaning different countries would actually lend us their brightest minds to share with us our burden, to carry on our mission, and contribute to our work. So please see this always as an open invitation. If you feel you want to contribute to Hidayah, whether through secondment or maybe internship, please feel free to communicate with us as well, because we remain open to maintaining Hidayah as an international institution and keeping ourselves from an equal distance from all countries, all philosophies, all definitions, and all views. We have three major departments, which basically tells you the three core functions of Hidayah. First is the research and analysis, and that's the think part of our tank, where we produce policy documents, but also research findings that we hope will be beneficial to the practitioners on the ground. Because we at Hidayah, we don't work with extremists or terrorists directly, but we work with practitioners, people in the field, policymakers, those who are engaging in these activities on daily basis. The second department is the capacity building and training department, which is basically the do side of our tank, where we follow train the trainer model on a variety of topics which I will be highlighting shortly. And then the third and final department is dialogue and communication, where we basically perceive Hidayah as a platform, as a hub for exchanges of good practices around the world. And allow me to emphasize on the word good practices. We don't have best practices because we hope that the best is yet to come. And also we recognize that Hidayah was created because we don't know. And if we knew the answers, maybe I should have resigned from day one. But the quest for knowledge and understanding continues, and we are always surprised, even by our own stakeholders, how little we at Hidayah don't know. Then we have our new office that was established in Washington, D.C. last year. And this office specifically focuses on the project of CVE national strategies. As probably you all recall, back on the 15th of January 2016, the former Secretary General of the UN, Mr. Ban Ki-moon, launched his prevention and countering violent extremism strategy, where he called upon countries around the world to help working on the prevention element and how we can build national strategies in this regard. And I connect again this to your fantastic question on the UN. Our Washington office coordinates with our UN colleagues in order to work on this. We developed an action plan, and recently in New York, we've actually, on the margins of the UN General Assembly, signed an MOU with the UNDP, specifically partnering with them on these kind of initiatives and how to work together. So instead of us trying to define, we work on how we can prevent, how we can intervene, and how we can develop good practices, regardless whether we agree on the label or not. You can call the disease anything you want, but we all acknowledge that it's a disease that requires cure. And if you're working the field of medicine, terminology is not the issue as much as you have the impact, and this is what we humbly hope to achieve, and hopefully we can go into this direction. Last year, we developed our own 3-year strategic plan, which we got it approved by the board. Every year we submit a plan saying these are the areas or the topics we want to focus on, but we realized we're dealing with something that is of long term, that requires a different perspective and needs to have some sort of strategy. So we developed 6 main themes and topics, which we claim that will be the main topics that will continue to haunt us all for the next 2 years as the main areas of how we can best develop good practices to counter violent extremism. The first topic is the CVE national strategies. Basically, we are saying most countries have some sort of counter-terrorism strategy. Basically, you collaborate as security, policing, intelligence, defense forces, where you deal with a situation, you grab them or you kill them, you put them in prison, the usual drill. However, if you want to have a countering violent extremism strategy, focusing on prevention, focusing on saying that I want the teacher at the school, the parent at home, the communicator at the TV, the policymaker in the parliament, the imam in the mosque, the priest in the church, if you want everyone to be part of the solution, you need to have a different type of thinking and a different type of strategy, which we specialize in and we work at. The second theme that we've developed is basically the bizarre phenomena of the foreign terrorist fighters. You have someone in a totally foreign country, converts to Islam, and they have 0 drop of Islam or Arab in them. They're purely non-Muslim, purely non-Arab. And then suddenly they convert, suddenly they smuggled into the conflict areas, and in a matter of weeks, maybe months, they start killing total strangers they never met before, and they end up blowing up themselves. The question is, how does this process of radicalization happens, and how they actually go through this process, and then can we reverse this process? The third topic, and we've seen this now today, as the conflict areas, specifically in Syria and Iraq, we see some advances on the ground, and many are fleeing the conflict areas, maybe trying to go back to their own home countries. The question is, what do you do with them? Once you capture these terrorists, what do you do with them? How you go through with them through a de-radicalization program? Can they be rehabilitated? Can they be put them in an institution where they go through a certain program and they can change? And or can they actually be reintegrated into community? Someone who used to chop people's heads, now you want them to go back and maybe start cooking food. How much the society or community will be accepting this? These are important questions. But let me also add more complexity and maybe a little bit grayness into the picture. What about the children who were born in these conflict areas, the children of Daesh? Now they go back home. What do you do with them? Do you put them in prison? Should they go through a juvenile system? What will happen to them psychologically, mentally? And you can imagine all the atrocities that they had to witness, that maybe they have committed, and how they need to jiggle with this, let alone their families, let alone the women who were involved in this. Therefore, the question of de-radicalization, reintegration is one of key importance to us. The fourth topic is the community engagement element. And basically what we mean, if we are truly sincere in countering all forms of extremism, We are all part of the solution. And we have multiple baskets within the community engagement theme. Number one is the empowerment of civil society leaders, NGOs, community leaders, those who have a voice and impact and influence, those who can inspire and make a difference and can change. They also have a role. Therefore, we have some programs related to the training of imams, related to training of civil society leaders, of educators, all forms of individuals who influence and impact their community. Within the community engagement also, we talk about, for example, the role of women and how they actually not being used in the traditional sense that they prevent and they cure and they deal with it. Unfortunately, we've seen some incidences, especially in Europe, where they are personally involved in carrying out operations. They incite, they smuggle money, they smuggle weapons, they are involved in many complicated issues which will require a different focus and also getting them involved. But then we also widen the scope, not just the issue of the role of women in countering violent extremism, but the role of families in general and how they can impact and how they can contribute, especially in the prevention. Also related to that is what we call cultural diplomacy, sports diplomacy, arts diplomacy. You see, if I would speak to any violent extremist, man or woman, and I tell them I don't want you to be a violent extremist, their immediate response would be, so what do you want me to be? What is the alternative? Well, I want you to be creative, innovative, culturally intelligent, tolerant, coexistent, meaning give them hope to look into things different than blowing up themselves or killing other people. There is always an alternative, and it's not true that the only solution for all the problems is basically taking someone else's life or taking your own life. And I claim that sometimes before they commit their physical suicide, they have committed psychological suicide long time ago. Then we have the important fifth topic, which is dear to my heart, and maybe this will be an opportunity to elaborate on the question that was raised earlier with His Excellency Dr. Ali, which is the role of education in countering violent extremism. And of course, this issue is one of great importance and interest, at least to me personally, for a very simple reason. All forms of extremism, regardless of the labeling, start as an idea. This idea triggers an emotional response. This emotional response triggers a certain behavior that we call violence or terrorism or any other form. Therefore, in this process, moving from an idea to an emotion to a behavior, we have multiple opportunities to intervene and to make a difference. Therefore, we developed something called the Abu Dhabi Memorandum on the good practices of the role of education in countering violent extremism, which basically give you a set of good practices. This was endorsed back in September 2015 by all 29 countries plus the EU members of the GCTF. And then the following year, we were able to produce an action plan, how you translate this policy document into something feasible. And when we refer to the good practices of education, I don't talk about the usual approach, which is curriculum development and design. We talk about the learning experience as a whole, so building the characters of the students, teaching them leadership, teaching them, for example, teamwork, team effort, at the same time working on the different dynamics related to the cognitive skills, such as critical thinking. Many have debated, should we tell our children and label for them who is a terrorist group and who is not? Can I always monitor my children when they are online? I have 3 beautiful angels and I could never ever know what they're doing. In fact, they are much better than me and when they start playing with little devices. Having said that though, even if I'll monitor them every single day, I will always fail. However, what we can do is to empower them, give them the immunity, the resilience, the mental strength, the necessary skills where they can basically look into the existing issues, the existing problems, all the narrative, all the issues that are being presented to them, and they can perform their own mental autopsy, their own critical thinking, where they can deconstruct all the existing narrative and find what is true, what is not, what is real, and what is not in this direction. The final topic is the issue of communication, narrative, and messaging, and what they call counter-messaging and counter-narrative. I personally hold a very specific view, And I have to be very honest here and maybe make a confession. Although Hidayah in its title, we talk about countering violent extremism, and although we lead on counter narrative and counter messaging, but I have a problem with the word countering because it immediately puts us at the defense. We're always reacting. It's always, we are the punching bag and everyone's just punching us all the time, and we have no time or opportunity to do what we need to do. I think what is missing is how we can design our own message, decide on the stage, on the tone, and also lead the kind of messaging, the kind of narrative that we want, providing the alternative that we need, not only responding to what others are doing. In other words, I would love to see a time where we create a message, and then the terrorists, they have to have their own counter-narrative efforts, not the other way around. And in this regard, we went through multiple processes of the thinking and evolution of our work. So basically, in some meetings I've attended, some of the guests took their mobile phone and they said, well, this is not a mobile phone, this is a weapon. You know, start attacking social media, all the propaganda, all the recruitment happens online, which is all true. So when my turn came, I took the pen and I said to him, sir, with all due respect, I will shove this pen in your eyes and let's now ban all pens from the world. Meaning, if the tool, if the technology is being misused, it doesn't mean that the technology is the problem. The problem is how we are using it. And the real question is not what social media is being used for the incitement or for the recruitment. The real question is why, when these terrorist groups create their message, why it resonates with some of us and why it doesn't. Why some of us are immune, are resilient, don't seem to buy into the message, and why others are being influenced by it. And I believe it's the content, it's the actual content that is missing in this equation. In many debates I had and discussions with many colleagues and friends, I raised a simple question, and I pose the same question also to you. Can you ever defeat an idea? I would say, nahi, that will never happen. But what you can do, however, is create a better idea that will compete with your old idea and leads away. Therefore, in a competition of ideas and providing alternative, we need to be equally creative, we need to be equally innovative, and most importantly, to be visionary, seeing into the future, what is it that we need to do. In my last part of my intervention, I will share with you some programs that we do, and also some resources that you might find useful and all accessible online. And I will share with you a secret. Everything I said, all the publications I mentioned, even our PowerPoint presentation is on our website. You can download it for free in the PDF format, including our books and volumes, all for free for your own use in English. Now, in our programs, there are some key activities that we do. For example, we host our annual International CVE Research Conference. I just came a couple of days ago from our 4th International CVE Research Conference that took place in Antalya in Turkey. Turkey is one of our board members. Last year we did it in Jakarta in Indonesia. It's also one of our board members. And the earlier first 2 years were happening in Abu Dhabi. Basically, the platform of the International CVE Research Conference is to allow and provide the opportunity for hardcore academics, people with serious research, to share to the wider CVE community, whether you are a policymaker or a practitioner, to be able to see how research can inform practice and how can we bridge the gap between what is happening on the ground and what the thinking happening at the strategic level in order to maximize the impact. We also have our regular capacity building trainings and programs, and I will refer to one specific leading program we have called Strive Global. This program is funded by the EU, where they were generous enough to provide us with 5 million euros to support 40 programs for the next 3 years, where we focus on multiple regions, including Central Asia, the MENA, and others, including the Balkans. And basically what we do is we post on our website specific requests. You as a civil society, you as an NGO, you as an expert, interested in working on an area of challenge within your own region, please provide us with your proposal, and we are happy to support you in terms of funding, but also in building your capacity to deal with these challenges and issues. And like I mentioned earlier, we follow a train the trainer model, meaning we don't tell you what you need to do because you are already an expert. We basically share with you the good practices that we've collected, that we've acquired from around the globe based on the different experiences and the different case studies, so you can improve your own practice and improve your own intervention to make the change and have the impact that you look forward to. Also, we have worked recently with a very interesting project. We brought two groups of people earlier this year. The first group are a group of former violent extremists. Some of them are right-wing white supremacy. Some of them are usual Qaeda and Daesh people. They're former extremists. And then the second group was only female defectors, former female terrorists. Imagine this. And both of the groups, we asked them two simple questions. The first question, could you please describe, can you please tell us, how did you become violent extremists in the first place? What led you to that? What did you hear? What did you see? What did people communicate to you that led you to become an extremist in the first place? The second question, how did you snap out of it? What made you wake up one day and realize you are on the wrong path? And then what we did, we start mapping their experience and basically trying through their own eyes, through their own experience, step by step, their own thinking, their own emotion, their own behavior, the whole process that they went through, from starting to feel guilty, all the way wanting to be active, all the way to be confronting.
Is it available on the website?
Everything available on the website. And this document is called Mapping the Experiences of Former Violent Extremists. And I hope you will enjoy that read. Related to that also, we created a special manual called the Counter-Narrative Manual in Southeast Asia. We worked on this through the generous funding that we received from the Attorney General Office in Australia, and with partnership with our colleagues in Indonesia, where we performed something similar, but looking on the specific counter-narrative element and what it actually means and how we can reflect on it at the time of conducting the project or conducting the research itself. The final thing I want to share with you, we have two online resources that I advise that you visit us, hopefully. One is basically what we call the Online Counter-Narrative Library. You have a collection of all the existing information, whether it's social media clips, hashtags, analyses, studies, research, etc., that will allow you to look at existing examples of how other countries, other individuals, other organizations use their own projects and their own programs. So instead of you searching around, just go to this counter-narrative library and you'll see some examples that you might want to also develop and utilize in your own work and experience. The second online resource is what we call the FTF catalog. We've invited several countries around the world to share with us their experiences with foreign terrorist fighters, the information, the data, the statistics, and basically to share it with the world, showing that at the end of the day, this has to be a collaborative effort, and it has to be a work that we all can contribute to as well. Finally, all our policy documents, all of our publications, all of our books are all available online. I strongly advise you to see also two key documents that we have. We produced something called the Hidayah Activities Overview from December 2012 all the way till December 2015. Every single activity we've done, you'll see a brief description, which gives you a bit of feeling how we work, how we function, what we do. And then we have another document talking about the future of our work and the things we want to do in the next couple of years. Gives you some brief understanding and idea. Also, please subscribe to our emailing newsletter. On the 15th of every month, a circulation that happens by email tells you what we did last month and what we're planning to do next month. So hopefully, if you have time and or would like to follow us, you'll be more than happy to accommodate accordingly. With that, I want to thank you again for your kind hospitality, and I open the floor for any comments, reactions, questions, and I see this very young, eager man in the back.
What is the website?
HidayahCenter.org. That's it. And if you just put Hidayah Center, you will see us immediately. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your brainstorming on ways to tackle the onslaught of extremism. In this context, I wonder, much has been talked about delinking religion from extremism. and rightly so. But I wonder what we closely, deplorably enough, what we closely have observed is that theological underpinnings have been into play in many violent acts playing havoc across the world. Just a few instances. In 2016, Omar Mateen indulged in mass shooting of 50 people at the LGBT club in Orlando, Florida. Indeed, it was not about Islam, but it was certainly about homophobia, which results from twisted interpretations of certain Islamic references. Similarly, in Pakistan, Karachi, Amjad Sabri, a Sufi singer, was attacked, not because of being Muslim, but definitely it was about anti-Sufi theology. And again, in Afghanistan, we see scores of Shia Muslims, Shia mosques, and what we call in India, Imam Badas, are systematically targeted. It is definitely about anti-Shia theology. And similarly, there are principles like blasphemy, or Salman Taseer was killed in Pakistan because he was by his own bodyguard, because he believed he was a blasphemous. And this was precisely what happened in Charlie Hebdo. My question is, how long will we keep washing off our hands from theological underpinnings? In India, we are tackling the theological underpinning of Ghazwatul Hind for long, and 6 prophetic sayings attributed to Abu Huraira do justify Ghazwatul Hind, and though there are different rebuttals, but not a single well-established Islamic scholar had guts to say that they do not exist in the Islamic theology, in the mainstream Islamic theology. At this critical juncture, briefly, what we Indians concern ourselves with is to protect the well-seated and well-rooted multicultural Islam, which I call culture-friendly Islam, something that Abu Rayhan al-Bairuni, the first Arab scholar and researcher of Indian civilization, wrote in his book Tahqiq Mal al-Hind. And he rightly pointed out that Indian civilization is all about unconditional love, acceptance, not only tolerance, multiculturalism, unity in multiplicity. So unless these theological underpinnings are countered, or you do not prefer this word counter, I would say unless they are replaced with alternative narratives, I think even our Indian civilization is at the risk of being targeted.
As a direct product of a marriage based on love, I can only agree that love is extremely important and it's part of our culture. Your very deep and complicated question will require that I reflect in 3 elements, and I do beg your forgiveness to give me a little bit the time to be able to address your question very, very properly due to its high sensitivity but also importance. The first reflection. Now, when we talk about